Hey, so welcome to Berlin.
Thank you.
Yeah, these are Berlin things that we do. Although I have to admit the Sauvignon Blanc was your idea, not mine. But still,
Some things don't change.
some things don't change. Yeah. When you're out in Cape Town on a good night, like what's a good thing to order?
Like a good drink.
Yeah, good drink.
Good question. I always think, when I'm in Cape Town, I'm often drinking like wine.
Yeah.
And so a good bottle of wine, I think, is always good to go. But if I'm also going to have like a fun night out in Cape Town, then a shot of tequila never lets you down. Like reposado,
Yeah.
just get it out of the way, removes the nerves, and you feel like it's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, I think tequila is such a universal like language.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
If
I don't think people know, but tequila is such a universal language.
it is, we all speak tequila.
Yeah,
Well,
we'll see.
if you, if you
Some
drink,
way to put it.
yeah, and I really like. Sometimes I've had moments where I'm at the bar and I'm getting tequila, and or I'm waiting to order. And then someone's like, "Do you want a shot of tequila?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then they're like, "Yeah." And I don't know this person, and they're just having their own night. But in that moment, we come together, we take a shot of tequila, and I'm like, "Yay!" And then
Because whoever says no to that question,
I don't. It's criminal.
Yeah.
If you say no, please
Yeah.
leave the club, leave the bar. You're not supposed to be there.
Yeah, it's same answers as like, have you listened to that new Beyonce album? You should just say, if you're unsure, when in doubt, just say yes.
I am looking at some of us in this room,
Mm.
and they're only two with a bit of a side eye, but yes. Some of us, me, have listened to it twice. So, yeah.
And it's 27 songs.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's country or country inspired.
Mm.
And it's growing on me. Today I listened on like one song. Sometimes you listen to an album and you listen to the full like track.
Yeah.
Today I was just listening to like one song from it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like it sounds like a new song because it's not part of the whole collective. So yeah, it's I mean it's
Interesting. What are your thoughts so far after having listened to it twice?
It's growing on me.
Mm.
I think that when I first heard it the first time, I was thinking about who Beyonce was in Act One, like with Renaissance, which is more like dance, like ballroom vibes. Then now it's not dance, it's not techno, it's completely a different genre. And I was like, I think I know this music, but I don't know why she's singing it. But someone said she's like having fun, right? And I think once I switched that part of my brain on, then I was able to have fun with her, like listen to what she's saying and like the music and the beats and how everything transitions and the concept behind it as well. So I think it's growing on me. Like I think by the time I go back, I will be, bopping to it.
What's a Beyonce song you think to yourself like, yeah, this woman is having fun on this track?
Two songs: "Love on Top," and "Party" with Andre 2000. And someone said, I saw this on.
Oh yeah, that's a good song.
It's a good song, right? And I have two memories of that song. The first one is when I first heard it was on like Channel O, back in the day. And
wow, that's a throwback.
It's
Channel
TBT,
O?
yeah.
What happened to Channel O? Do you know if it's still around?
I don't know if it's still on. Maybe, I would think so.
I think of Channel O and I'm thinking like, do you remember Kellis?
Yes.
That's how far Channel O takes me back.
Yeah, that was Channel O though, and that was Party, right? I remember it was coming out on Channel O, and I was like early in the morning, and like my dad woke me up and was like, "There's a new Beyonce song," and I was like, "Oh my god!" No, he did.
I thought your dad is in on it.
No, he was in on it. Yeah. I was like, "There's a new Beyonce song." I was like, "Okay, I'm coming," and I remember just feeling so happy, right? And I got maybe 10, 11. So I didn't really know what like partying looks like, but it just felt fun. It was like, she's just having a good time. And like, everybody's just swinging, So that's the one memory. And then the second memory is someone recently posted on Instagram, I think. And they were like, oh, I hope that my summer of 24 is like the party, like the song, right?
Wow,
like,
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Actually. Yeah, right. And I think with Beyonce, at least to me, it feels like she's having fun on that song. Yeah,
it's a good track.
Right.
It's a really good track.
You just want to have a good time.
Yeah, man, Channel O era. like
Isn't it
with
crazy?
MTV as well.
That era was also, music videos and just music, I think, was a bit different. The way we consumed music then in Channel O, MTV was not was a very it felt a bit more collective than it does now, at least for me, right? Because when a song came out, you have to see it on Channel O or like MTV or Trace, like those are the places where it's showing. It's not on YouTube, so you're gonna have to go into the TV room and like sit there with whoever is there, and like, they get to hear your music. And if you were like me and you had like relatives or brothers, then you also hear what they're liking. Like when are they turning on to Trace, right? When are they turning on to like Channel O, right? And sometimes it's like they're playing Kwaito, sometimes they're playing, like hip hop, and someone's like, oh, I hate that song. They're like, no, but I like the song. Like there was a conversation always happening around the music you listen to. But now I feel as if you could just listen to your own music and no one would ever know, right?
Like, and whenever you want to.
Whenever you want to. Like, you are not negotiating the news. Like, oh, like it's 8 p.m. No, like ZBC is on. You're like, no, I don't want to watch news about, I want to hear like the latest songs that are dropping now, right? And so, and also the top 10s were a big thing, right? Like how
top 10s,
your top 50, top 40 for the Sunday. It's just, it's changed a little bit.
Those top 10s, and there's also, for us, a huge thing was when we were in boarding school, we didn't have access to any of this stuff. So we would consume music through the Sunday newspaper. Used to have, they'd pick a song, and then they'd put the lyrics to the song.
Yes.
On the back page of the newspaper.
Yeah.
And that's how, like, that was the hottest piece of paper there was on campus. When that dropped every Sunday, people were like,
wow.
And people take that, write the lyrics, like, like Neo's, what was it?
So sick. I think it was So Sick. The way we all knew the lyrics to So Sick. Oh my God. I have such a specific memory of that because we had the same thing. The newspaper was called the Herald.
Yeah.
And there was a section, the Sunday Herald. And the Sunday Herald also had like an entertainment section at the back. And I remember one time, like my dad used to buy a lot of these newspapers. And one time I would always take the entertainment section. Didn't care about the business or the news. And they would have a song similar. And this is how I learned the lyrics to Nicki Minaj's Moment for Life. To this day, I can sing that song off by heart because of the lyrics. And people would write lyrics. Like, you have lyric books and people were like, write lyrics. I don't even know why.
That shit could get passed around in class.
Yeah.
Like, people would be like, hey, I heard you have the lyrics to such and such.
Yeah. I was having a business in high school where...
A business?
I had a business in high school.
Okay.
It was a small enterprise, but basically what I was doing was I would burn music. Remember the burning CDs time? And I would burn CDs for people, like, and my brothers would come back with music, and then I would just take it, burn the music, and then as like a little bonus or addition, I would cut out I would look up the lyrics, print out the lyrics for you, and bring you the burnt CD and the lyrics of the song on that CD. Yeah, and that was my lunch money. So
this was proper, well packaged.
Listen.
Hey, look, you get the music and the hymn book to go.
It was a hymn book.
You get the hymn book to go along with it. It's nice.
Yeah, and it got me through.
Do you remember how much you used to charge?
I don't remember now. Like, but I know it was around 2008, 2009, and the money that I was getting was enough to make sure that I had lunch money every day and at the tuck shop, and it also meant that I could also buy something during the weekend that I wanted with my friends, like go get some ice cream or like go get it was I was balling a little bit. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't starving.
Interesting. I didn't know you had such entrepreneurial potential. Did that ever feature in any CV resume?
It really didn't. Yeah, it's so funny because it was just something I did, and it came out of because people always asking me like, oh, do you have like the latest series? And there was a time where people had to like dub series, right? And I remember I had like Grey's Anatomy. I had, the one about the twin brothers who were like, I don't know, they were like hunting down vampires or something. I had all these.
You'd be surprised how wide of a catalog that description.
That's so true.
Pulls back.
Yeah, Vampire Diaries comes to mind. I had all of these shows that started like way back when. and people were dying to like get a
To
slice,
get their hands.
and I was like, I got you. You know, like
Mm.
access to the internet was limited, right? So
Yeah, and I think the thing that used to carry. I remember like Vampire Diaries and all that stuff. There was that wave, and for whatever reason, I just never like really got into it.
wasn't your vibe.
I think at least watched Twilight,
Mm.
but again, I don't know whether I was on my phone when I was watching this movie, but I just didn't. Just never caught on for me.
You know, some of these things are like making a comeback now with
Yeah.
some of my students. I have this one student who is like very obsessed with the Twilight books. And I thought,
Oh, making a comeback like the old ones?
yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And I thought we kind of all had moved past it and like would never admit in the light of day, you know? But then it's making a resurgence and Harry Potter books. And I'm like, are we still. I'm like, oh, okay,
You know,
like
these are the modern day classics. Like,
yeah.
modern day classics. That's what's happening.
But when you hear it, you're like, it didn't feel like a classic, or
Right.
it doesn't feel like a classic to me.
Because there was a time Shakespeare was like, "Oh, he dropped this book last year. Or he dropped this
exactly,
last
that's true.
Oh, you're still reading this?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's like, nah, people actually continue to read this.
Exactly. Yeah, Twilight is
our Shakespeare. That's all of us will be forgotten except Twilight. That will live on.
That will be the archive.
Yeah.
When they look back and like, who are these people? Like, what did they do? What did they read? Twilight.
Alien civilizations will come. And shit, this actually kind of slaps. Flipping through.
Oh my god.
I'm telling you.
That's too funny.
Have you ever been called by someone or heard the song in the distance playing on the TV and ran from wherever you were into the living room?
For a song?
Yeah. Like, oh, so you're like, Keith, like this song is playing.
I mean, I've had 2 encounters with a song. One has been
2 encounters.
Yeah, you know, again, no surprise, it's Beyonce. But one was Single Ladies, and when Single Ladies dropped, like the music video, again, it was during this time of like Trace, MTV, whatever, right? And I think what was so iconic about it was a single shot or something.
Oh yeah, very true, yeah.
And it was the first time I think that an artist had incorporated a single shot into like a music video. So she just started, did the whole thing and never stopped. And then like it was iconic.
True, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just one take.
One take, and then that was done, right? And so it was in black and white. And so I remember coming back from school and I was like in a frenzy, just like I need to go and watch TV, and turned it on and there it was. And when I tell you, I was transfixed in the living room, just trying to learn this choreo. And I remember, you know, when the song finally finishes and you're like, oh, I'm out of breath. Like, oh, let me go get some water in the kitchen. I turned around and there was my father just standing, looking
shaking
at me.
his head.
And I was like, hi. It's like, and I was like, how long have you? He's like, every day.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Like never been more proud.
Yeah. I don't know if proud was the word, you know? Yeah. It's just like, to be fair, he handled very calmly.
Yeah.
It was very like,
okay.
Yeah. Like,
just keep it pushing.
Yeah, keep it pushing. Like, I'm sure he called a friend later on, but like in the moment, just like so calm. And yeah, so maybe that's the moment that I'll give. What about you?
For a song where I've had to leap over a table or none come to, you know, the funny thing is I can't remember a song, but the visual of running into the house because you heard the song, like that shit's super clear. And like especially running from outside the house inside to come listen to it, it's crazy.
Isn't it?
Yeah, those I think songs like that would elicit that kind of response from me though. I don't know if you remember Wayne Wonder. Yeah.
Yes.
Wayne Wonder. What's the name of the song? No Letting Go.
No. Yeah. That song, so good. It's one of my liked songs on Spotify.
Oh, you liked?
Yeah.
And I think it's 2009,
Me,
2008,
yeah, 2009,
somewhere around there.
2008. Wow, I remember we had this party back in Triangle. And like in Triangle, people are not having parties like that,
Yeah.
right? So it was, and we had this party and that song played. And like it just felt like people came alive. And it was just,
Yeah.
there was a way in which also the way people danced was very much more, instead of like, oh, I want to show a dance move, it was more about like feeling the song, right? And like being with someone, or like just kind of like moving as a group, and it was just like it's a bit more like you feel it more centrally than you do
Yeah.
like you need to get like this is the movement, right? So I think of that song every time I listen to it, and I think of that party, and I'm like, damn,
No, that song, that was a good song.
done so well.
Done so well.
Mm.
And yeah, I don't know what. It's one of those songs where it doesn't matter when it was dropped. Classic.
Oh yeah.
It will compete regardless of when it was dropped.
And you can play it now and
Yeah.
still, like someone
And
who hear
still.
it for the first time, and they'll be like, wow, like I really like the song.
Yeah.
It doesn't really feel as if it's confined to a time period, or like, it's just whenever you play it, it's a good song. It's a good song to hear on your own. It's a good song to hear with people
For
at a
sure.
club, like doing the dishes. It's
Speaking of listening to it to the group of people, when that song came out, I remember things like Apple Watches weren't even a thing. I think maybe we were like at iPhone 2
yeah.
or
Wow.
3.
Wow.
I think that's where we were. So the idea of like, cars that can talk, watches that you can use to call people, like it wasn't really a thing at that time. Closest thing that existed at that time, there's one kid in class who had this watch that had a radio to it.
Wow.
And as far as we're concerned, he was Steve Jobs presenting like, the new MacBook Air. He came to the class.
Cutting edge.
This is
black
bleeding
polo,
edge, not
everything.
cutting, bleeding edge technology. That's how on the cusp this guy was with that watch.
Oh my gosh.
And I think the watch was maybe like, realistically speaking, maybe like $5, $10, which at that age is like a couple $100K. Like that's how much that felt like at that point in time. And I remember like we couldn't believe this guy's watch had a radio to it.
I'm also like, how does that work? I'm even trying to conceptualize it
so
now.
it's like watch. It looks like picture like Casio, the ones that used to have buttons.
Yes, I remember the Casios. Yeah,
the black Casios, and I'm not saying it's a Casio, but like
that kind of feel.
That kind of feel, like black, and then had like buttons to it. And then on top of that, now had like an audio jack, like a 3.5mm jack in the side
that you could connect.
And I remember he came to class with it, and he plugged in the earphones, and then he just passed it around the class. Like people were just putting the, as unhygienic as that scene was, but like people are taking the earphones and putting it in. Listening. I remember the song that was playing was Wayne Wonder, No Letting Go.
Wow.
And think about this: you're in boarding school, you haven't had like entertainment for quite a while. Then you just plug that in. It's just playing Wayne Wonder with that song. It's just, oof. Wow. It's quite the feeling. I never forget that. Like it's such a good song.
Yeah, and it's also such a memorable way to experience the song in any way. You know what I mean? Like you never really forget listening to it through like a watch, right? That had like a radio. That's also, that's a bit, it'll stick with you. Yeah.
And to think now we have like Apple Watches. The way 8-year-old me would jump at the Apple Watch, I think at that age I'd consider, if Apple Watches came out, I'd consider stealing to get one.
Yeah.
Like that's how. No, like sincerely, if we're able to go back in time and we're like, hey, by the way, there's this thing called an Apple Watch. Here's what it looks like. These will be available in 2024.
Yeah.
Flying cars, no. But we do have this, like consolation prize.
Yeah.
8-year-old me would be like, okay, cool. Yeah,
I can take that.
I can get behind that.
So you've always really then been really fascinated with like technology and technological products.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think one of those like gadgets that I think really got me into technology, I think was was like gaming, actually. As much
Ah,
as I don't really game as much now, but like at the
then
time
yeah,
it was gaming. Like having, remember, like Game Boys, Game Boy Colors, Game Boy Advances.
yeah.
Then it was like Nintendo Switches, Wii's, stuff like that. Although I
Mm,
went the PlayStation track.
yeah.
Um, but I just think having access to those tools, I think the
Mm,
one that really like catapulted my, I think my curiosity with technology was,
yeah.
um, so this was maybe back when I was in the sixth grade,
Mm.
something like that, and I got PlayStation Portable.
Oh,
Yeah,
what was that?
PlayStation Portable, a PSP. You
Ah,
know,
yes,
electric
I remember. Yeah,
PSPs.
when it had like it said like PSP.
PSP,
Yes,
exactly.
yeah, 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 yeah. Uh
And
huh.
um, I'd really wanted a PS2 at the time,
Mm,
but my auntie was like, I'll get you a PSP instead.
mm,
Or I've sent over PSP, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what it is.
mm.
It's not like the internet is there for you to Google and see what it is.
Yeah.
So I didn't quite know what I was getting in the box.
You're hoping and waiting.
Yeah, I'm hoping and waiting. And then it finally arrives. In my head, I'm thinking, I'm trying to imagine, like she said it has a screen to it.
Yeah.
She said it's a PlayStation still. So I'm imagining PlayStation with screen. So I'm picturing
Mm.
like if you see like a PS2 but has like a laptop situation going on.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what I
yeah,
was
yeah,
thinking,
yeah, yeah.
which was so
Imaginative.
imaginative, but also just like so, I think, grounded in just how what technology looked like then.
Then,
Like the only
yeah.
time way I could imagine a screen on a device was if it looked
Mm.
like a laptop.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But I got it and I'm looking at this thing and I've never seen one before. Quite
Mm.
literally, the first one I saw was mine. And I'm like,
Mm.
it's making all. I think one thing that Sony has always gotten right with technology is that
Mm.
um, not only is it a tactile experience where you're clicking on something and then there's vibration behind the key,
Mm-hmm.
like even PS5s,
Yeah. The little.
there's that,
Yeah.
like that's such a key part of the experience as well. They always have that right. They always have also sound. I think that's another
Mm.
thing that I don't think a lot of technology companies pay enough attention to.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like when the thing starts up,
Mm.
like like PlayStations, for example, they're famous for when you start it up, makes that there has like that melody to it. PSP,
Mm.
same thing. When you go left to right, has like just various like noises to it that just make it such a all-encompassing experience.
Experience. Yeah.
And
It
so
activates all your senses.
it really activates all your senses. And then quality
Mm.
screen, quality, just like they know what they're doing.
Mm.
And then I think what really got me into tech at the time was in part, I think we were learning about in school. We had like computer studies. It was just like an elective that
Yeah.
you can take. So yeah, computer studies, and you could they were teaching us about like how the internet works.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the days of like
The World Wide Web. Yeah.
routers, and
Sure.
dial-up,
The dial-up.
dial-up stuff. Yeah,
Oh, guys.
it was that era of stuff.
Yeah.
And they were teaching us about like how all these things work. And at the time, admittedly speaking, I think that was like pretty advanced
Yeah.
stuff for that age, like
Yeah. Or
fifth
even to be
grade,
in school to
in
learn
school,
that.
yeah, to
Yeah.
learn how like internet works and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
That's really advanced.
But for me, it I think it was like I was getting puzzle pieces to the device I already had. Because
Mm.
one thing I was really trying to do with the PSP was like connect it to Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
and I didn't know what this Wi-Fi thing was, but
Mm.
just like each game would be like, if you want to play this part of the game, connect
Connect
to
to
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
So like when I go to school, I'd be like, okay, they're teaching about like how the internet works, like
Mm.
how, okay, is this Wi-Fi thing,
Yeah.
wireless local area network, all these things, and then
LAN.
like
Yeah.
slowly I kind of learned how to configure it.
You're being like your own detective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like as that stuff was being taught, like it was like grounded. It was a bit more tangible for me, I think,
Mm.
with access to like what I had access to.
Mm.
But yeah, I think just over time, also, yeah, just over time, just having I think access to those kind of things like really did help me, like I guess develop that curiosity
An
for,
interest.
yeah.
Yeah.
But then also like I think we also grew up in a really interesting time technologically, because if you remember, um, mobile phones
Oh my god.
were a hot thing. Like
Oh.
people would feature them in their music videos. I don't know if you remember
Listen,
that.
okay.
You remember Nelly
It-
and
the Excel sheet
and
and
the
the
Excel
flip
sheets,
phone, yeah.
which apparently she can never live down. But
Nah,
yeah, like
still love
killing
it. Yeah. The flip phone,
the flip phones.
the
Yeah.
razor, the BlackBerry.
Yes.
Yo, it's I remember the first time I got my first phone. It was a big moment, right? It was a Nokia 6310. Yo, remember that?
6310.
Yeah. And there'd been the 5110, and so this was like the 6310. And it was my 13th birthday.
Mm.
And that was my birthday gift. It was like went to a really nice restaurant and like sat like it was like the country club.
You're winding down and then giving a phone.
Listen, okay. When I say the standards were set high, they were set high. But I remember after having that, like receiving the 6310, which looking back now, right, it's just it didn't have as much functionality as phones do now. But at the time, it was such a game changer, right? Like at school, everybody wanted to like, oh my god, like Keith got the new phone, and you're like,
people usually don't say hi to you, saying hi
I'm
now.
like, hey, you're like, I know you're saying hi to me, and I remember the like service provider, which was Econet, used to have this thing where in the night they would have like these bundles that you could have. And so people would like stay up and then they'd just be texting. And those just it was like the QWERTY texting where it was like, hi. And it was like, what are you doing? Or like it is just like you use one letter or two letters and it's just like butchering the English language. But it was so exciting to feel like you were coming into like this new world that felt a bit more like your own, at least for me, right? It was very like, this is my phone, like I can talk to my friends. And then the only rule was like you have to be reachable, right? When like your parent calls you, I'm like, okay, cool. But the rest of it was about like my friends and I. And then we would like, oh yeah, yesterday we were texting, or I was playing Snake and I got to like level what.
Man. And,
yeah.
and it was also just like in that era, I think we're becoming increasingly more connected. And it was just so fun. You can text people.
Yeah.
Like endlessly. It's not like, because we came from like every SMS costing. It costs something to communicate with people.
That's
it's
why
not
stay
like
up
now
for the free bundles.
all those like forwarded messages you get from
yes, the aunties. Oh my god, in the WhatsApp
you used to have
group.
to pay to send a message.
And I think that's why we're a bit more stress-free.
Right? Maybe that's it. Like we should just when they say like what small change will lead to the biggest impact, we just start charging for text messages.
Yeah, especially the forwarded text. Exactly. Can we just charge that? The more forwarded it's been, the more you have to pay. I think that will help. Just because sometimes it's too much. It's too much.
Yeah, it's a bit much. Just like at the drop of a hat, people just send you messages.
Yeah, and that's the double-edged sword, right? Like on one end, we're very accessible to each other and we're very connected, and that's really good, and you can keep up with people. And then on the other end, it also means that people can sometimes invade your space or have access to you in ways that you wouldn't really want to. So I guess it's a small price to pay. But do you remember when you got your first phone and what it was?
First phone, yeah, but I mean, I started a bit low on the staircase. Okay. It was a Nokia 1200.
Oh, that's not like.
No, this was like, it was a brick. Quite literally, I think it was like that thick or something.
Is it the one that had like a nice torch?
Yeah, it became popular because of the torch. That was the selling point of the phone.
Yeah,
it has a torch.
Yeah, and people bought it.
I mean, like you'd be surprised how useful that feature was. Like people dropping things in the dark. Sometimes there's a power outage, so it was actually very
good to have.
That torch, and those phones used to last forever.
You never got rid of that phone.
You never got rid of it, and then in terms of charging, like you charge it every 3 days or weekly.
Do you remember that? It's wild now that I think of like charging systems, because especially like when you use Apple products, I feel as if the phones particularly, after a year or two, you're charging like every 5 minutes, and it's just not feasible. And then you have to have like a power bank, and it's just like, guys, what's going on?
It's just a bit of a headache.
Yeah,
Having to do all that.
but the quality is good though. Those photos. Great.
Yeah, I mean, stuff has gotten to the point where I think now you can even like record movies with
Yeah.
like iPhones and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
we've come really far. I remember the first I don't know whether it was the first globally, but the first camera phone I could remember was a Samsung. I think it was like C100 possibly. This was back in the day, C100, and it was a flip phone.
Yeah.
Flip phones also need to make a comeback.
Yeah. They just, every time I hold a flip phone, I feel like my attitude changes. You know, like, it's like, hello.
Just like your tolerance for bullshit goes so
Down.
much.
I'm like,
No tolerance for bullshit.
no. Do you see me with the flip phone?
Screaming more.
Yeah, exactly. They're gonna know who I am.
Exactly.
Oh, they were so slick though. They were so slick.
Flip phones and also the phones that you could slide. I thought those were really good. The ones you slid up or slid to the side like that.
Yes, it came out like this. Yeah.
Why not?
Was it a
have that?
Nokia or a Siemens?
So there's the Nokia E7. So they started. There's Nokia N8.
Yes, it was the N's.
So it was the N series.
Yes.
So Nokia N8 didn't. So they came out with like N70, N72, N75. They were all touchscreens. So the development was the touchscreens first, and then now they came out with the Nokia N8.
Yeah.
That had, it was full like touchscreen, like no keypad, nothing. And then I think after that, I don't know, they came before or after, but then it's like the Nokia E7 looks like the N8,
yeah,
but it also has the keyboard, which
so you'd slide it up, right?
You could slide.
Was it the one that had a little like pen that you could use?
Did it have a pen? I don't think so. I think that was the Nokia N96.
N96?
Yeah.
Because I remember there was a Nokia that I think my dad had where you could slide it up and it had a keypad. And then it also had this little pencil that you could pull out that you would use on the screen, like to like type.
Oh yeah, could be N95. So N95 had a screen and you could also slide it up, so it's probably the N95.
Yeah.
N96 was full screen, but I don't think it had any keyboard, did it? Might have, I don't remember.
Okay.
But yeah, those are great time in my opinion.
Yeah, and also what happened to Nokia? Like,
oh yeah, so Nokia, what happened is it came down to operating systems.
Okay.
So obviously we have iOS and we have Android today.
Yeah.
But back in that time, Nokia had their own OS. It was called Symbian.
Okay.
Symbian OS, and they decided to try and keep going with Symbian. And then when the smartphone thing came around, like I think ended up partnering with Microsoft with the Windows phones, if you remember those.
Oh,
the Nokia Lumias.
Yes.
But Windows OS, like as a mobile phone OS, just wasn't as good as Android, wasn't as good as iOS. It just didn't catch on as much. I think the real issue was people making apps for their app store. I don't think that many people were developing for the Windows App Store.
For the Windows App Store. Oh, so
as they were for iOS and for Android. Yeah, so as a consequence, yeah, they essentially picked the wrong OS to go with. Had they gone with Android from the beginning, I think they'd still be fine.
Yeah.
But they instead chose to go with Windows, and then like no one's really trying to buy Windows.
Yeah.
People either want Android or they want iOS.
Wow.
So eventually, I think Microsoft ended up buying the whole like mobile phone division. They're still around as a company, but now they're more focused on. They have like telecommunications business, I think.
Oh.
They also still did like I think cameras. Like I remember they had this like 360 camera. I think it's like Nokia Ozo or something.
Oh wow.
Something along those lines. It's like a 360 camera has you can view on all sides. Other than that, they were now the mobile phone division was acquired back by some Finnish company called H&D Global.
Wow.
Last I checked, they tried to like revive it, and it's these phones that you're seeing now, like smartphones, Android.
Yeah.
But with the phones that they have now, now they're on the right OS.
Yeah. Android.
They're on Android now, so that's good. But I feel like there's a lot of the aesthetic that made Nokia is kind of missing.
It's gone. Yeah.
It really feels gone, and they're just not as attractive to look at
as
as
they were before.
used to be before. In my opinion, Samsung phones are the ugly ones to look at beforehand. But now, like Samsung has really worked on
Change
the design and like stuff does like the Samsung Ultra. I'll still buy an Apple like iPhone over that,
but it looks better than it did before.
they look good.
Damn.
They look good.
They really got lost in the race.
Yeah. How do you feel about the number of cameras you see on the back of phones nowadays? Like I think the Ultra has like is it like 5?
It's a bit wild.
Yeah.
You know, like even when I think about the iPhone, right? And when I first started using an iPhone, I had like one tiny, that little camera that it had, which is kind of, it was fine, and it allowed it to feel slick, right? The quality of the picture, of course, not great, right? But how it looked, right? And it looked very slick and it felt slick, right? It was just very like not clumpy. You could just like slip it in your pockets. And I think that was also part of like the design allure, at least for me. But then now the one that I have is like 3 cameras, and it's just, and sometimes like someone pulls out a phone, right? And then they'll have those like 5 or 6 cameras in the back. And I'm just like, as
a bit much.
As yeah, from a design perspective, I was like, okay, that it's a bit jarring, right? And it also feels heavy, right? And it's sometimes when I'm wearing particular like clothes, it doesn't always fit in as like slick as it used to, right? So I'm like, what's the point of us? It almost feels like we're going backwards in time in terms of like the thickness of the phone, like how heavy it feels, all because you're trying to optimize for the quality of the picture or like the camera, right? And it's good to have good quality cameras. And also, there was a time when you'd carry a camera around to take pictures.
True.
And then you'd have your phone to do communication, right? And there were not two things that had to be linked. So yeah, that's a bit, I don't know. What's your take on it?
With the multiple cameras.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah. Well, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there are quite a number. It's also crazy, like back in the day with with these old phones like the 6210. During that time, colored screens, like those cameras, like I think YouTube used to play videos at like, it was like the era of 240p, 360p, 480.
YouTube.
720 was actually a huge step up.
Yeah,
720 is a huge step up.
Sometimes you watch videos that were like
back in the day where like there's YouTube, and then there's the video itself. It's a small cube in the middle. That's the music video.
That's it. That's exactly it. Yeah. Oh my God.
And it's like, I go back and look at certain music videos, and I was just like, I think that whole era of music just was like green screen.
Yeah.
It was very green screen heavy to make things look like. There's one song I really like. It's called "Go" by Common. Do you know that song?
I don't know.
But yeah, it was very. I remember at that time really liking how it was like very abstract.
Okay.
So it's green screen, yeah, but it was like they like really utilize that to be abstract in the music video, and I really liked just the way the video looked. I went back and watched it, and yeah, like at the time, it's because your eyes also get used to 4K.
Yes.
Like what a 4K screen looks like.
Yeah.
When you don't know any better, like,
exactly.
That looks amazing.
That was it. Yeah, that was the ceiling.
I mean, like especially like compared to your grandma's screen that's like black and white. Like it's a huge step up.
It is.
So yeah, just going back and watching some of those music videos, like it's so hard to believe that I used to look at this quality, and in my memory it's crisp.
Yeah.
It's a crisp music video.
Yeah. It's, I think being part of this generation, like, as we were saying, millennials, right? They say that one mark of being a millennial is going through being always at the cusp of these technological transformations, right? And
really?
Yeah, because if you think about it, millennials as a generation saw the transition of technology at such an exponential rate, right? Like at the beginning you would even know like some millennials who grew up with like long plays, right, as the only, like, let's say music, right, long plays as the only form of like how people consuming music. Then you move from like the long play and then you move to like the cassette, right, and then you had to like listen to side A, side B, or like you'd like, you know, have to like get it properly done with,
Yeah.
you know, yeah. So then that
You
was
remember
like,
sticking a pen into a
yeah, a
cassette
pen, and then you were
rewind?
like twisting it, right? So there was that, and then you moved from the cassette, and then you went into like the floppy disk, CD era, right? And like that was a new way of experiencing music. And then from then on, we're now talking about like music being on TVs, right? And like people watching it. Burning music was a huge part of like the transition. Then people went into like online, right? And we, at least for me, there was like an era of Mixit, there was an era of like SoundCloud or music, then there was like Apple Music, then there was Spotify. So we've really seen so many transitions, and like some of the things I've left out too, like how technology has changed. And then you think about that with a phone, think about that with a computer, think about that with TV, you know, like
So many things, actually.
so many things that phone calls, like the way we've seen the transition of technology for millennials is really like we've seen it change, versus when you think about like Gen Z, right, or like Alpha, you, the transformation or like the change is not as like large.
Yeah.
So
It's more or less like it's been part of their lives from the jump.
from the beginning, right, there's been a screen that's in 4K or HD. And you remember
No,
what that
very
was
true.
like. Yeah.
Very true, honestly. Yeah, with I hadn't really thought about that in terms of like we've been able to see like the advancement and being able to kind of go along with it. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's
No, honestly, the yeah, like with you're mentioning we've grown up with growing up with screens, seeing the technological advancement. There was some other piece of technology you mentioned.
the long play.
There's long play. There's music with cassettes.
Yes, the CD, the floppy disk.
Oh yeah, floppy disks don't even take me back. And you know it's still being used as like the save icon.
Stop.
Yeah.
Oh
Right? Floppy disk is still being
yes.
used for save.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
They
Yeah.
should change it to like a memory card now, but yeah, it's a floppy disk.
Yeah, and then people had memory cards in their phones. It's just we've seen too much.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, yeah, very interesting time to be alive. I didn't know that that was actually a thing that was like linked to millennials, like being super excited about technology. Didn't know.
Yeah, or at least going through this different like forms of technology, right? Because the generation that I think we were growing up with it, right, in real time. And like, you know, you're like young, then your teenagers, something else came, your early 20s, something else came, your late 20s, something else came, you know, like so we were growing up as technology was also like shifting, right? I think we remember the first Steve Jobs like presentation,
Yeah, with the
right, of
iPhone.
like the iPhone. And then we also remember so many more after that as well, right? Like when we also remember like Siemens and like Nokia, right, as providers of like cell phones, right? Where you ask people now who are younger and they're like, who is that? Or they'll tell you what they do now, right? So
Exactly.
there is a bit of which I think also I'm curious as to how it affects us as people, right? To see so much technological change, because now we also have like AI. You know, it's just
Yeah, and you know that's the other thing. Is like yeah, definitely there's been a slowdown in, I guess, like how drastic the changes are in like smartphones, and then in a way you get to a point where you're like, okay, how much? But it's incremental change now that we should expect, and then just AI came about with ChatGPT and other things, and it was just like such a mindfuck. Honestly,
yeah,
it was
it's
crazy. And, it's crazy even being like working in tech and you see a piece of technology and you're like, how are they doing this?
wow,
And
yeah,
like no way it's actually doing that.
mm,
Like you can't even conceive that you can actually just ask it anything and it's going to give
and
you
it
a
will do
straight
it for
answer.
you.
Yeah, man. I remember signing up for Spotify the first time.
Wow, yeah.
One of my friends was telling me about Spotify and they were like, hey, there's this platform, it's called Spotify, you should really sign up for it. I'm like, okay, what is this thing exactly? It's like, or you can listen to all your music. And I'm like, okay, I can download music off of YouTube to MP3, put the link
The
in that website,
iPod, the
or
MP3
iPods,
players.
MP3 players,
Yeah.
downloading music online. Like I can do that and then just have my playlist on my laptop and I can take that wherever with me.
Yes.
What are you telling me about Spotify has music you can say? It sounded to me like there was no value proposition.
Exactly. What are
There's
they
no value
doing?
being added by this
Yeah.
company. So this guy's like, no, 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 trust me, just sign up for it. So I sign up for it and I tried the free version first.
Mm.
And I'm listening to songs, but there's like ads in between.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, okay, like now, not only am I just listening to music that I already have downloaded,
Loaded. I could have just listened to. Yeah.
now I'm also getting ads in between.
Mm.
And then I don't know what happened, but there was just a moment where it like really clicked.
Mm.
I think maybe either I was just searching up songs and I realized like, oh shit, the whole world's music is here and it's legitimate.
Yeah.
And I'm not going through crazy torrenting. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
Torrent.
Yeah.
Not going through torrents or any of that stuff. And it just works. And then just slowly and surely, just because they're part of your life.
Yeah.
And now just trying to imagine like living without Spotify.
Without it, oh my god, it's unimaginable, right? And that's also such an interesting thing about technology. I find, and maybe it's because of like my own interests, is how we name things, right? So even thinking about like playlists, right, and where that comes from. And back in the day, people would like make a playlist for you, right? They would, and by that they would like go and record on the radio station, like the station starts to play, you put in the cassette, and you're like, oh, that's the song I want to like, Brian to have, and then they would literally make the whole playlist, right? And then they would have to wait for it. And now you just kind of search for it, and you're like, oh, okay, this thing, this thing, this thing. It's a bit easier, and I like that it's easier, but I think also there must have been a bit of
take some of the magic away.
Yeah, like recording a full cassette for someone side A, side B, and saying like, oh, I made this for you, right?
There's a craftsmanship that's lost.
Yeah, right, and the patience that you have to have, and also remember the VCR.
Oh God.
I just thought about that. Like
VCR.
And you'd have to dub over it if you wanted to like record a show, like a movie.
You had to have space in your cabinet for Lion King 1, 2, 3,
and
4, 5. You had to have a cabinet dedicated to having
right. Wow.
I remember I used to have Lion King Coming to America.
Yes. That was a staple.
Yeah, Lion King Coming to America. Which other ones?
The Matrix. We had The Matrix. We had Lion
Matrix
King.
As well.
Yeah, Coming to America, The Matrix.
This might be a bit of a throwback. I don't know if you know them, but there's also like this, I don't know if they're Congolese band called Makoma.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, Makoma as well. We had the tape.
Oh my God.
We had the tape as well.
And the thing with that kind of music is, if you had the tape, you'd always like play it over and over again to the point where you like knew the choreo, like knew the lyrics by heart, and if someone comes like, oh yeah, play that, put on that tape, and then you knew exactly what tape it was.
Exactly.
It's just, it was, now you just play, and then the algorithm will give you something new that you haven't listened to.
Exactly.
It's different.
Isn't it? How do you feel about like R&B artists or like musicians not really doing too much like choreo and their music videos?
I find it a bit. I think I'm nostalgic. I think the more that I think about my music taste, the more I realize I really am now in such a nostalgic space in terms of my listening habits and who I want to listen to. I really miss the craftsmanship and the musicianship and the performance of R&B, right? I think R&B for me was always a genre that included a lot of performance, right? When you think about great R&B stars, right, or like even groups, you think of like TLC, or you think of like Destiny's Child, a lot of who they were, even in the music videos, involved like performance and choreo, and when they performed live on stage, right, they brought that performance in. And I think what's interesting now is some of the performers going back to that, there's this song that's been trending on TikTok, Made for Me by Money Long, where it's like twin.
Oh, that song.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, yeah.
And yeah.
By the way, speaking of just the absolute detour between the song and the way it's being used on TikTok.
Is it
complete? I went to watch the music video. This is after I've listened to a song like for a good maybe month or two. Like every other TikTok is featuring that song. And go check out the music video, and it's actually like a love song. First of all, nothing to do with besties.
Yeah, which you would think if you were watching. TikTok. Yeah,
has nothing to do with besties.
Yeah, that's right.
True. It's like like the music video is like a sad, like heartfelt song, but just the jam.
And then it's like fun, like music videos. But when she talks about that song, and what's interesting about how she made that song is she really made it in the genre of like, you remember old R&B, like, you mentioned Kelly's, Mariah Carey. There was this other girl starts with a K2, who said like Heaven Sent, like that. Keisha Cole, that era of like R&B, right? And so she says she went back and she was nostalgic for that, and she actually used Jermaine Dupri as one of the producers who worked on the song. And he's worked on a lot of like R&B, 2010 and like 2005 R&B. Mariah Carey's hits are like Jermaine Dupri. So she went back to that, and that music video, I think, and for me, involves a lot of that performance that R&B is, where like there's a whole story, and then like she makes an alien like guy out of him, and I miss that. I want that to come back. There was a bit more like storytelling effort. I'm like, where is it?
Yeah, no, honestly, there used to be. I don't know what the psychology of like music is now. I think there's a bit of like we don't have to think too deeply about it.
Yeah,
like it can just be a cool beat with just like even the lyrics are not like super meaningful. It just sounds good. It's just something you can sing along to, and doesn't have to really mean anything. It can just be a music we're just having. At the end of the day, like it's the vibe that is the most important thing, not necessarily even like what's being said or any of that stuff.
A friend of mine who actually like studies, I think he's doing a PhD in music, like hip hop.
Really?
Yeah. Jesus. And one of the things he studied for his undergrad was this new genre of hip hop that's in the US. Oh my god, it's called trap. I think it's trap. Trap. Yeah. Right. And the thing with trap or like mumble rap, right, is you don't really have to hear what they're saying, but it's the affect of the music, right? It's how it makes you feel, right? Like, and when you're listening to trap or you're listening to like some mumble rap, sometimes it gets you in a particular space, right? And you feel a particular way, right? And you then embody that. And then that's why you want to keep listening to it, right? And that's the form of connection you have to the music. And he was like, at least that essay was arguing that this is really important, and it's a new way of like, like African Americans like embodying their like lived experience and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, okay, that's all fine and well. And I'm a lyricist at heart. I miss when you would hear someone's like heart in the pen. You're like, you really like, it's like you're writing poetry. Like it rhymes, one, because it's also like rhythm and blues. Like that's R&B, right? It rhymes, and you've been clever. You're being witty. You're like referencing other songs. You're also like expressing how you're feeling, right, in the song. It's all there. And just that, to me, is, even when I listen to that song we're talking about, Money Long, like Made for Me, it has all of that, right? Like it's like those qualities of like the rhythm, the rhyming, but it's also like stories being told, and there's like the bridge, and we coming back to the riff, like yeah.
How much of this do you ever think to yourself is like, oh, this is such a millennial take to have?
It's a millennial take to have.
It's a millennial take.
It's a millennial take to have.
And we'll stand on it.
I will. I will. I will. It's a millennial take, and You know something I've realized,
Yeah.
not to make it about that,
Yeah.
right? But but you know what? Let's embrace it, right? We are millennials and we're going through particular phases of our lives, and I think that's okay.
Mm.
I was talking to a group of people one time, and we were saying how the way, and I'm interested in like how you experience this, but the way I have become quite exposed to different genres of music across different time eras, right? When I think of divas, right, I think Mariah Carey. I also think like Dolly Parton. I think Aretha Franklin. Like I think what's her name? She sang "Coming Out." She's Tracy
Coming out.
Ellis Ross's mom. Diana
Diana Ross.
Ross. I think of Diana Ross. I think of like women who existed across different time spans.
Mm.
1970s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000.
Yeah.
How do I know all of this music, right? Because I was like, not even born for some of it, very young for some of it. It's through my aunts, right, who would come and then they would play their own songs like in the space. And then I also know it through my own siblings, right? Then the way I know 90s 2000 hip hop, right, is because of my brothers, right? It's not because I had a particular interest in it, but it's being played all the time, right? And I love like Kenny Rogers because of my father, right? Just different people in my life had different music influences, and that influences you, right? But now I think I realize, and I think that's sometimes it's a millennial thing, right? Where you like, how do I know this music? Oh, it's because like, how do I like country? Oh, it's because someone in your life,
Yeah.
right? But then I think with Gen Z, because of the fact that you can just listen to your own Spotify, the idea of sharing music or like getting in
Yeah,
touch with
true.
music, right, is like very inorganic. How you discover new music is like either you're following someone who's telling you like this is a cool song to check out, or you're like on SoundCloud, like very deep in the mix, and it's not like the people across different generations are passing down their
True.
music.
Yeah, for me, I think it's more. I think a place I pick up music quite often is like the barbershop, actually.
Yes.
And so Shazam. Another thing that has really left the process of like sharing music is actually asking someone like, "Hey, what's the name of that
What's the
song?"
name of the song? Or
Yeah,
how do you know the song?
exactly.
Right? Then they will tell you the story about like how the song came into their life, right? Or
Mm.
like why they like the song, or like why they like the artist, right? And now I ask my students like, do you know who Ja Rule is? Like, or Ashanti? And they're like, there are people who don't know Ja Rule. They're like, who's that? Yeah, and I'm like,
Ja Rule.
I'm
I
like,
mean, I would love to see music from him now. I would. I'd be interested in seeing. He had such an exceptional sounding voice.
it was very distinct and
It was a very
unique.
distinct voice.
Yeah,
Like
very distinct
no
and
way you could
unique.
mistake it. I'd actually be interested to hear. I'd have loved to see what Jaro would have done with like trap music or any of that stuff. And then just yeah, I'd love to
Mm.
hear that. There's also Shaggy,
Oh my god.
Shaggy, Sean Paul. Uh,
Remember that song Angel? Um
Shaggy or Sean Paul?
I think it was Shaggy with like Girl You're My Angel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, uh-huh.
There's the guy who sang in that,
Yes, with
and
him.
with him, and he also sang "Wasn't Me" with
Yes.
Shaggy. What's that guy's name?
I don't know what the guy's name
I
is.
don't know that guy's name, but that guy is such an unsung hero in
He,
Shaggy songs.
he carried those
He
songs.
carried
He
those songs.
carried Shaggy across the line.
And man, another thing is like when those songs came out and being little and not really understanding what those songs were about, I listened back to them. I'm like, how was any adult letting me listen to this?
This is what I was about to say.
I was letting me listen to this.
Like, and why was I singing along?
Exactly.
Right? And I remember with Shaggy, that album Angel, when it came out, right? It was a cassette, and then we went to the store, and my brother was like buying their own music, and then I had been seeing that song on the radio or like on TV, and then I said I want the cassette. And I remember the store, like the woman who was working in the store, looking at me, my like 8-year-old self or something, and being like, I don't think that's what you want. And I'm like, no, I want that. And she was like, how do you know this music? Right. And at the time, I didn't understand why she was looking at me like that. Right. Then I went back and I listened and was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
The No. I
No, like really and truly. So it shouldn't have had access to some of
no,
that stuff.
like why? But we did, and
We did.
we turned out fine. I think it's
It turns
okay.
out okay.
Yeah, it's all right.
Minimal emotional damage.
Yeah, no, not too much.
Yeah. Was there a set time we used to have MTV and that kind of stuff come on from 5 p.m. So used to be, I think they'd have cartoons running from like 4 till 5, which used to suck for me because I'd get back home at like 5. Just have missed it.
Yeah.
But then there'd be like the Beat and MTV, and I don't know what it was, but the older I got and like started dipping into teenage
Years.
then it started becoming a lot more appealing to me. Before I knew it, I was like 5 p.m. I'm at home to watch the Beat. That's what it was about. And this was also during the era of Alicia Keys with You Don't Know My Name.
Oh my god. See, someone we need to give some credit and her flowers to is Alicia Keys for how she did music videos as like stories. They were almost as if they were like shorts that she was shooting, right? And that, like, You Don't Know My Name is such a great example of that. Every time I think about it, it's like that's the one where she's a waitress. Is it?
She is.
Yeah, right. And it starts off. You see the shot of like walking into the restaurant, and then like the whole thing starts. You know, it's the nostalgia. Man. Is this what it feels like to be like slowly,
right? Slowly aging.
Yeah, it's like
so I know it will be
longing for things,
sitting on a porch, talking about back in my day.
Exactly, this is how it starts.
Gathering kids around from the neighborhood to tell them about.
Let me tell you.
But as opposed to telling a story, you share a link with them. You send a link.
You airdrop it.
You airdrop a link.
Like here it is, and then you're like,
just enjoy. Then let's talk in the comment section.
Yeah, exactly. I'll see you in the comments.
Or are you one of those people who goes on like old music or something like that, and like who's still here in 2024?
You know what? I am the person who will like it. I'll show you support.
Yeah, those comments always have like thousands of
likes, right?
Of human beings.
It's going back.
Nationals from different countries liking that.
That's world peace right there.
World peace is liking that comment that says we're still watching it. There's a video I went back to, and this was like one of the OG YouTube channels called Epic Rap Battles of History.
Wow.
And I went back to watch one of their videos. It just crossed my mind, and I was like, let me go back and watch it. And I watched it, and I realized that comment wasn't there. Like, who's still here in 2024? Like, the last comments, legitimately, 7, 9, 8 years ago, like, no one had been there in a while.
Wow.
So I was like, I have a responsibility as a human being to post this comment asking who's
upstanding member of society.
Exactly. As an upstanding member of society, I should post who's still here in 2024. And I'm checking it like I'm checking a portfolio. Just like how many likes does this? I don't think I've got any notifications. I don't think I've gotten any. I'll go check, but
I'll go back in solidarity, and I will. I will watch.
Thank you.
I will. I will do my duty too as an upstanding member of society.
I think I use like a burner type
YouTube
account making that comment.
I see.
So yeah, but what kind of person are you on social media? Are you a hop on Twitter, get straight into battle, commenting, replying, quote tweeting, or are you just an observer?
I am, especially when it comes to Twitter, I'm such an observer, right? I think I admire people and respect people who have those like Twitter wars, or like who are writing threads on Twitter. I always say to myself, how are you able to sustain the focus to do this, right? For me, it always felt that I would think about something, then I'll be like, that would be a good tweet. But I'm just like, I'm not going to tweet it, right? Or it will be in my draft somewhere. But I see people who come out every day and they are just threading and like offering this, retweeting and like arguing with this person, right? And to me, I don't understand what the end goal of it is, right? Because rarely are you going to convince someone of a new perspective by talking about it on Twitter.
Over Twitter, yeah.
I think that I have a higher chance of it with a friend maybe who I am like disagreeing with, or with someone in person, right? I think there is something about disagreeing with someone, particularly like in person, and having established a relationship with them
Yeah.
where they know that you disagreeing with them is not personal in that sense of, you think any less of them. It's just like, oh, I have a different take, right?
Exactly.
And it's either, I think they become more receptive in the sense that they can allow it and say, oh, okay, that's what you think, cool. Or they can be like, oh, that's what you think, and then over time they're also thinking why that's what you think,
Exactly.
because you're in their life.
And but the other thing is, like, people are not anywhere close to as confrontational as they are on Twitter or online. There's keyboard courage is a real thing.
It is, right? Because you're also alone and you don't really know who's on the other side, right?
Alone in the dark.
You're in the dark, literally in the dark, and your only little screen of like your phone is on, and you're like, and like your alter shadow self can really come out. And I find it interesting that my observation is that I think the more we've had technology like Twitter, right, where people can show up as 2D, right, I think people have also become even more avoidant in real life. So
Mm.
I don't know what your take is, but I think what I've noticed, at least with my students, is that they are very avoidant in person.
Is it avoidance of interaction or conflict?
Conflict, right?
Mm.
Avoidant of conflict. They avoidant of conflict, and they're avoidant of like conversations that involve disagreement, right? Or to
Interesting.
say like, I feel you hurt my feelings when you did this, right?
Mm.
Or like, oh, I don't quite agree with that. Or that thing you said, actually, because of my own thing, I don't really think we should do that, right? They're very avoidant with doing that in person. But when it comes to online, they're actually very confrontational, right? Like confrontational, like with Snapchat and like Twitter, and just how they approach it. Like they'll make groups and like remove people from groups and like create their own groups. So they're very confrontational. But then in person they'll meet. They're like, oh, that person is my friend. And I'm like, how is that
Interesting.
person your friend when you're being very confrontational?
Yeah.
Maybe using, as you were saying, maybe they're using like what is that? A
Burner
burner,
account.
right?
Yeah.
But you know that they're doing it because you're advising the student, and you're like,
Mm. I mean, when it comes to that, first of all, I wasn't really aware that people, like, the progression was that people were becoming less confrontational in person.
I think, well, it's my own take. I'll
That's
be
not it.
curious to know what you have observed or what you think about that.
Um, to me, it seems that I think there's a lost art in terms of the just like in-person charisma, or there's
Mm.
in-person charisma, there's in-person interaction, and typically for that kind of thing you'd rely on seeing how other people interact with other people
Yeah,
older than you,
yeah.
and you'd be able to, like, oh, okay, this is like, let's say you're out with a parent, an uncle, or an
Mm.
older brother, sibling, something like that, and you're
Mm-hmm.
able to see how you're out together with them, and you meet someone in person, and you're able to see how they navigate and interact.
Mm, mm, mm.
Talk to receptionists, talk to person at supermarket and things like
Yeah.
that. But I think we've progressively gotten so far removed from that and more online, where
Mm,
everything that you need um, is available to you through a couple of clicks.
mm,
And then also, I think just the nature of society has also become a lot more transactional.
mm-hmm.
If you think about how people are also just moving so far apart,
Mm,
the more, and I think it's also been a bit more evident to see that progression with family, I guess, being from an African country, because, um, there was maybe like 2 or 3 generations back,
mm.
the way life used to be is that, you'd have your father, like, give you a piece of land from his land, you'd split it up amongst you and your
Yeah.
siblings, and then you all build houses
Mm.
close to each other, and then, like, like that. No one is moving too far away. Like, you're more or less
In the same
grow
space.
up in the same, born in a place, grow up in a space, and then
Mm,
you don't really move too far. Like, you're within distance.
mm, mm,
So
mm,
that community aspect, that familiarity with people, is still there.
mm.
Like, like I even take like my hometown for example. Like people just kind of know each other, like, and they've
Mm.
known each other over time because they've been
Together.
living in that
Yeah.
town for that
Long
extended
period
amount
of
of time.
time. Yeah.
Nowadays, that's not really there as much, or at least my experience in the West. It's
Mm.
definitely become a lot more individualistic and isolated,
Mm.
where people are not really interacting as much in a community sense. It's more like individual,
Yeah.
or like if it's community, it's not necessarily about like familial ties or because you're family friends, or you grew up together. It's more
Yeah.
like you have a common interest,
Mm.
common interests on the same Reddit space. Then now
Yes. Yeah.
you combine that now with so much of people's interactions with each other now moving online. I think
Mm.
people are maybe getting better and better at the online um,
Aspects of like
aspect, the
socializing.
online charisma. I think that's
Mm.
becoming more of a perfected art, and the in person being a bit of a lost one.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
It is. I mean, like, I think one thing that one person who really reminded me of how much you really had to be like a thorough entertainer in order to succeed was Cat Williams. I don't know if you saw
Yeah, 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 yeah.
the Shannon Sharp interview.
Mm.
It's very few people who are able to command people's attention. So like, there's no like gimmicks and tricks and all that stuff.
Mm. Mm.
It's just a person speaking,
Yeah.
and they're able to hold your attention for 2 hours plus.
Mm.
Very few people are able to do that, who have that level of
Mm.
it's eloquence, it's ability to speak and present yourself. Like I feel like not too many people nowadays have that. I think what we get to practice a lot more is
Personality.
the online personality, the taking
Persona.
pictures,
Mm.
the handling things through writing.
Yeah.
When you're in person in real life, there are things that you wouldn't say to someone, one, with the audience, two, because you can get punched in the face,
Yeah.
and three, it's also just like you don't have time to think. Like when you're in a Twitter war, you can take your time
Yeah.
and you can think. And what ends up happening is that self that ends up online is just a curated version of who you are. Like it's
Mm.
curated thoughts. You have the ability to go into your drafts like, nah, let me not say it this way.
Yeah.
Let me say it that way.
Delete and then you write.
Delete,
Yeah.
rewrite, and now there's no character limit, so you can really like
Get into it.
just get into it.
That's such a good point, and something that I think about is two things. The first thing is small talk, right? And the art of small talk, and then also banter, right? Like in person. I feel like I observe that these people don't know how to do small talk anymore. Like
Yeah.
you, and I think especially with the pandemic, what do we do? Just to the amount of
You think it had that big of an effect?
Yes, I think the amount of students who I
Really?
see who are more and more socially awkward,
Yeah.
like don't know what to do in a space, don't know how to talk to adults, right? In a way that's you're giving a bit of banter, but it's still like I know you're my elder or like you're an adult, right? Because as you were saying, you learned how to do that when you go out with your parents
Mm.
or when your parents have guests and you are like the child, right? And the friends or the uncles and the aunts have some sort of banter that they have with you, and you learn what those boundaries are through practice, right? You learn how much to say, how much to not say, how much to rib and not to rib. There is a practice that comes with it
Mm.
that I think, at least for me, my observation that it's many more young people don't, especially like I think teenagers, don't know what to do with that sort of like banter, or even just I'm around people who I don't know for the first time. How do I just break the ice? Which is a
I
difficult
see.
thing to
Yeah.
do, right? But it's a skill, right? These people
It's
are
a
not
skill.
supposed to be your friends, right? They're just supposed to be like new people, right? Maybe you go to a networking event, maybe you go to a gallery opening, right? Maybe you go to like a friend's party who's invited you, and like with a friend, but you don't know any other person there, right? How do you break that ice? How do you kind of get people to start talking and then remain curious and interested, and then know when to say, okay, we've done enough, I'm gonna move on now, and what's a nice exit that I can make? Those kind of human interactions I think are slipping away a little bit
Mm.
because you don't need to know that. I just need to know how to present myself online. And I don't know if you've had this experience where you encounter someone first online or as a persona online,
Yeah.
and then you think a certain way about them, right? Because of their charisma, as you were saying, right?
Online, yeah.
How they present, and then sometimes their angles even make them look taller or like bigger or whatever the case may be,
100%.
right? Then you meet the person like in person, and it really feels like it's such a letdown.
Like a really huge letdown.
Like, you know,
It's quite a step off the ledge, actually.
yeah, right.
Honestly, yeah.
And it's a weird thing to experience, but I think it's happening more and more now because the way we actually first meet people is often online, right? If I'm with you, then I say, "Oh, I met so and so." You'll be like, "Oh, who's so and so?" I'm like, "Oh, let me send you a link." Right? And then I'll send you a link of so and so. I'll send you pictures of so and so, a video of so and so. You're like, "Oh, okay, cool." Then you'll meet them again when you're with me. Then I'll be like, "Oh, remember that person I showed you?" Then you're like, "Oh, that's them." Right? I think that's how people get to know each other more now versus you meet someone in person, then you get to see like a version of online of them, whether that was
Yeah.
like an email or like their like Instagram account or etc. So yeah, I think you're right to say we are progressing in how we develop our personalities online or our personas online, but I think it also is coming at a cost of how we are learning to interact with each other in person.
I see.
Right.
No, fair enough. I mean, I think the thing about like meeting people who like online, they have this persona, and it's like it's a series of curated images and like witty tweets that you don't know how long the person has been thinking about it. Don't know if they took it from
Someone
else,
else, yeah, which happens.
which happens.
Mm-hmm.
But when in that context where not only you have full control of how you're seen,
Yeah.
how often you're seen, and in what context. Like you have full
Mm.
control of that. Like
Yeah.
reality doesn't give you that.
Mm.
It is to a certain extent. Like when you have guests over, you pull out the good dishes for them.
Yes.
Like in ways like that, you try and cover up things that way. But otherwise, in terms of being able to actually, like, I guess, sweep reality under the
Under the rug.
carpet,
Yeah.
it's a lot more difficult to do that in person than it is online. Online, like you
Mm.
can really hide just behind, like, I mean, the people who build whole like 400, 500K followings on Twitter, and it's just like it's not even an image of their face.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like some image of like a cartoon or like a
Yeah.
character,
Stock. Yeah. Image.
just a
Yeah.
stock image, and they just have the whatever they tweet and the name, and that's enough.
Yeah.
You know,
And people be like, oh, I feel like I know them. Like, oh, this person's like really funny. And to us, they are like in your mind, this
you
person
know
is real.
and that version of them is, but then when I've met people in person who I first knew online,
Yeah.
I think the most drastic ones are where like the like online you're like, hey man, this person's like charismatic, I'm expecting like super,
Yeah.
and then you meet them in person and they're shy, or they like don't talk much, or they're quiet. Not that there's
Mm.
anything wrong with being any of those things, but
Yeah.
it's usually just it almost feels like you advertise something that didn't quite come as advertised once you open the box.
Yeah. This wasn't.
It's
Yeah.
not quite
What I ordered. It's like one of
exactly.
those memes, like what you ordered, like what you advertise and what you got, right? Is very
Exactly.
different. And this is a bit of a detour, but as you were speaking, an image that came to mind was, I don't know if you've seen videos of like makeup artists online these days, and they're usually like the canvas of the face is their selves, right? Like they're usually like doing makeup on their own like face. And then I saw this woman who had been doing like makeup industry for a long time, and said a lot of the young makeup artists, some of them fail when it comes to then actually becoming hired makeup artists because they're so used to doing makeup on their own selves, they don't
Oh,
know what
that
it's
thing.
like to do makeup on someone else,
I see.
which is what really the job is for, right? Is to do makeup for someone else. But because online you can gain traction, right? Of like showing people what you're doing to your face and doing all of these things, and it's a very insular way of like practicing the art, right? Which is still relevant and significant, but it's not maybe how the art is going to be practiced when someone says, hey, I've got 10 models and I need you to be like a makeup artist for them.
Exactly.
Because don't those 10 different models have different skin cares, they have different like contours and features, right? And the last part of this detour is there's a guy, this black guy, who is like does makeup now for Beyonce, and
Yeah.
coming back to Beyonce, but he started doing makeup for first for drag queens, then for like a strip club, right? And he had to do it very quickly on them, then he'll send them out, and that's how he was able to transfer that to doing like makeup for like Naomi Campbell before she walks on. And he's what I was famous for was doing it really quickly on someone else,
I see.
right? And like he doesn't really do his own makeup at all, but it's about doing it on someone else. So it makes me think about that idea of who people are in person, and also then how they show up like in 2D, right? Which, yeah, or online.
Yeah, which, as much as, uh, I definitely think that being able to do it, in person is definitely takes a lot of work and practice in order to like really solidify that.
Mm.
But I think one thing that I've also really come to appreciate over time is how difficult it is to like really also cultivate an online persona.
Yeah,
Like, even if you want to say that,
this is,
you
yeah.
know, people online like putting together an image that doesn't necessarily track with reality is a lie. Even putting that lie together takes work.
It's
It's
making
not easy.
content is hard.
Yeah,
It's
it's like
hard.
it's not an easy thing to do, to put that image together, to like right lighting in the right place, knowing good
Mm.
locations, knowing what moment to take,
Mm, mm,
knowing
mm.
what to think to do. Like, even that, even if it's something that's highly curated
Yeah.
and artificial, like, I still have to appreciate the fact that it still does take work to know how to like put a personal brand together
Yeah.
and put that online and really make it translate in a way that's compelling to other people. At the end of the day, like, you're still speaking to people, you're still getting, to think of being able to have thousands upon thousands of people following you or aware of your existence. Like,
Yeah.
that's not a thing that used to happen
No, not at
for the
all.
quote unquote common man.
No.
You know.
And it was reserved for, because you think about what media used to look like then, right? It was newspapers, right? And that's like what people were going for. It was a very controlled industry. And I think it had a lot of people who would gatekeep it, right? A lot of people who you had to go through for them to then say, yeah, you can be on our magazine cover, right? You can be on the front page of the news, or you can be interviewed for like television, right? Now, people don't need any of those things, right? Even when you think about like acting, like people don't need to go through the ways in which they did to like get casting,
Yeah,
right? People can just discover you online while
exactly.
you're doing like skits, right? And they'll be like, oh, I really liked your content, and then that's how you become like on HBO, right? And that's really, I think, disrupted the system in positive ways, and also when you think about it, it takes time to cut and then re-edit, to say no, this is not going to work. And there was this woman on TikTok who was talking about how her son is the one, she's a mom, like her son is actually who like edited her a lot of her TikTok videos. And because he has like ADHD, or is on like autistic spectrum, he's not really good with attention. So her videos have this thing where they're like after a couple of seconds she changes like direction and like angle, right, in the same video. And what it does is it actually keeps your attention like locked in, and then she whispers when she's like speaking, so it makes you want to like really
Listening.
engage with it, right?
Yeah.
And not feel like she's shouting, then you want to like scroll past.
Mm.
And so having that attention to detail in kind of understanding your online audience is still a lot of work and takes a lot of attention to detail,
Yeah.
right? And I think the people who will be able to sustain and like move into the future are people who are able to adapt to those kind of changes
Exactly.
that are happening, because it is what human beings do. You adapt or
You
you
adapt.
don't. Yeah.
True. And I mean, like, the skill of being able to like speak into a camera,
Mm.
like, there's no one there, and just like you're speaking into a camera lens and being able to still translate your um like charisma, being able to you know, get your personality across on that
Mm,
medium. Like
mm,
it's a skill within itself. You know,
mm.
like you think of the act of smiling, for example. Like smiling is typically an interactive activity when it's genuine.
Yeah.
You know, like someone smiles at you, you smile back. When it's supposed to be happy and energetic, just looking into a camera lens, like it's just, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's tough. And then it's also just difficult not to feel like you're doing something super inorganic and artificial when you're just listening to yourself
Over and
talk
over again. Yeah.
energetically into something that is not a human being.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I guess the world is progressing to, and you have to adapt to it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like becoming an influencer now is a real job, right?
Yeah.
Like 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, or maybe let's say 10 years ago, I don't think that was something anyone thought they could do for a living, right? But now it's also changing what people can do with their lives. Where a lot people used to have jobs, like 9 to 5 jobs. People, I know a girl who was on TikTok and she left her big law firm job in New York and said she's going to be like an influencer, content
Really?
creator. Yeah. And that was going to be, she was doing it so well that, at least from what she's saying online, it's,
So she had the traction. Yeah.
yeah, she had the traction. It's going to be able to like get her through, right? And she's getting all of these like brand deals and like marketing and like being flown out, that kind of thing.
Mm.
And still, that's a real life skill. And I think young people now can be like, yeah, that's what I want to do, right?
Yeah.
And if you're able to kind of like hone it in, train that skill early on, it opens up how
Quite a lot.
what your life can look like.
Yeah. And yeah, honestly, it's becoming a realer and realer prospect to be able to do that, and just like
Mm,
it's becoming more and more important to take that swing and just put yourself out there.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's still similar to our old R&B music videos where we had people dancing and doing that stuff. I still think it's important to learn how to bust a move or two, in person. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think about R&B and I think about the rain. Do
Oh
you remember
man.
like the
Yeah.
rains? Like it would
Yeah.
be like people just dancing in the rain and like the rain is pouring, then you like get on your knees,
Yes.
and
With the wife beater.
yeah, yeah.
Insane.
We listen, people are going through it, but
Mm.
I think I
But
agree, it's
but the
still
music's
important.
loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. Keith, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Really enjoyed this chat.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and you're always welcome when you're back in Berlin.
Don't tell me twice. Any chance I will get, I'll be back.
Yeah.